why not have an option for children who want to independently use their bank account? There's no better teacher than experience.
Yeah.
The stakes involved are going to be so small that it's not going to be that big for you to create such a hue and cry. Because the money involved is so small, let them just be smart spenders. When they get that liberty and the power of their own money, what do you think they do? It's revenge shopping.
How much do you save for your child?
We are also guiding all our clients to say that why don't you start saving for their higher education when the child is born itself.
Are you worried that your child is spending too much, doesn't understand the value of money, and is looking for instant gratification? How do you teach them good money habits? And how do you teach them young so that they can avoid pitfalls down the road? This is Moneywise on NDTV Profit, and I'm Alex Mathew. The reason I want to talk about this today is because the Reserve Bank of India announced not too long back that it is contemplating letting banks have unsupervised access to bank accounts to minors above 10 years of age. We ran a poll on social media to find out what you think about that, and nearly 2/3 of you said that it was a good idea. The rest said either that it was a bad idea or, at the very least, unusual. I wonder what my guest has to say about that. Joining me today is Harshvardhan Roongta, co-founder of Roongta Securities. Harsh, thanks as always for taking the time.
My pleasure, Alex.
This is a concept that we've often discussed on my shows, but I think it's something that bears repeating. So let me ask you about the newsiest bit of this topic, which is that the Reserve Bank of India seems to think that it's a good idea to give some access, unrestricted access, to money to children at the age of 10 and above while they're still young. What do you think about that?
So, well, I think as of now, you can always open a bank account in the name of a minor under the natural guardianship or the legal guardianship. So, but the operation of that account is going to be handled only by the guardian,
yes,
as of now.
Yeah.
Now, what RBI is proposing is that any child who's 10 years and above, you give them an unsupervised bank account kind of a thing, wherein they have the liberty to transact in that account the way they like it. There'll be a checkbook, there'll be probably a debit card on that.
Yeah.
And
depending on what the bank does.
Yes, and there will be a risk management policy designed by the bank,
yeah,
saying that how do you want to basically manage the risk in that account,
yeah,
considering that a child who's 10 years and above but a minor,
yeah,
is operating it.
Yeah.
So I think for parents who would want to introduce money management to their kids, it'll be a good move. And if RBI has thought about it, I'm sure there must be some logic that has gone behind it. They may have put in some numbers to it. They may have some restrictions. And, I guess why not have an option for children who want to independently use their bank account? Of course, given the framework of risk management that they have in mind. So yes, why not?
So the reason I thought that you'd be a great fit for this conversation is that I remember back in 2016 when your son was young, you used to talk about the fact that you'd give him 500 rupees at a movie theater to say, go and buy your own popcorn. Because what's the worst that can happen? You lose 500 rupees, right? But
That's
you're
right.
teaching him a valuable lesson. So in this context, if you are given or you're giving access to a child to a bank account with, I would assume, a limited balance, I guess that is the same concept that they're attempting to follow.
Yes, absolutely. So Alex, just let's put it like this. There's no better teacher than experience.
Yeah.
Right? And sometimes we get so, paranoid with the outcome that we forget that the stakes involved are too small. Like, for example, if you have a child, you're going to watch a movie, reiterating the same example.
Yeah.
This is for other parents as well. Your child is, say, 10 years and above, or, whatever. And, during the interval, you're saying that, okay, hey, take 200 rupees, 500 rupees, or whatever. Go and buy food for yourself.
Yeah.
Now the child goes over there, finds out, first he will go and buy something. He'll know the price of that. He'll know that change has to be taken back. He'll total up, he's buying 3-4 things. He'll total up how much is the total amount, and he'll make the payment. He'll take the change and come back. He'll take a receipt for it. The learning that is there in this whole exercise is going to be immense.
Yeah.
Not as much as you're going to lecture the child is not going to learn much.
Yeah.
Now, what is the the downside of this entire exercise? That the child is small. I mean, if he's a young kid, he may drop that money.
Yeah.
Okay, or he may not get the exact change back.
Yeah.
He may not take a receipt back.
Right.
Now, that's the only thing, right? That's exactly what he or she will learn if you're going to undertake this exercise with the child.
Yeah.
So we don't need to be paranoid. We need to teach them hands-on. Now, flipping this to say that, okay, while we are physically handing cash to the child to go and buy, in this example, they will have a debit card of their own which is linked to the bank account.
Right.
And they will go and undertake the same exercise. And what if something goes wrong? That's the only worst thing that can happen. The stakes involved are going to be so small that it's not going to be that big for you to create such a hue and cry.
Yeah.
So I think this move is good to introduce money management, to introduce being familiar with money, to spend and to keep an account of that. I think it's a brilliant idea, provided there is a proper framework. There are limitations to how much can you do. So you can have a per transaction limit of say 200 rupees, 500 rupees, depending on each individual child. And I think why not? I mean, that's what we talk about, introducing money management to kids at early age.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, our mind is only tuned to say that when we talk about money management with kids, it's about helping them save money and invest and introducing investing.
It's usually about the restrictions, right? And how much do you set aside before you spend? Why is that not a good idea? Because, and I've heard this often, right? Where parents say, okay, this is your pocket money. I'm giving you 500 rupees a week, but you need to save 200 of that. And the kid is like, hey, you're giving me 500 bucks to spend and you're telling me to save that. Why?
So I'll tell you, Alex, there has to be a systematic way in introduce money management to them. Okay, I'm not saying do not introduce savings culture from day one. I'm not saying that. But depends on the age of the child, depends on his, the absorption capacity. Like for example, if you're talking to say a 5 or 8 year old child, and you give them 100 rupees and say, okay, first you save 20 rupees and then spend 80 rupees, they're not able to comprehend that.
Yeah.
Okay, like even if you're going to schooling, they introduce alphabets first and then words, and
Sure.
it has to be a process. So I think the first thing that you should be, helping kids understand and to probably learn is to be smart spenders.
Okay. What does that entail?
So basically what happens is we've never focused on spending at all. We never focused on training children to spend wisely. Because spending is a very integral part of financial management.
Sure.
If you don't know how to save properly, all your lessons on investing is futile.
Yeah.
Because unless you've not spent wisely, there is no money left.
Right.
Right? So first stage of kids, I think because the money involved is so small, let them just be smart spenders. Let them spend.
So, but okay. So that sounds incredible to me. I don't have a child, so I don't know. But it sounds great on paper, Harsh. But I think a lot of parents today are contending with issues like, oh, my kid needs instant gratification. There is a huge hue and cry if they don't get what they want in that moment. How do you tie in that and the need to tell a kid or teach a kid that instant gratification is not necessarily always a good thing, and also the need to teach them how to spend?
Yes, so this is a typical problem of peer pressure, quite honestly, because if your kids are in a particular circle of friends where everybody is spending an X amount of money to say probably buy a phone or buy something else, and you're on the other hand telling your kid that no, don't think about instant gratification, you can't put your kid in that confusing state. Okay, you have to understand what kind of friend circle he has, or else you tell him not to interact with those friends. You can't tell him like, keep going to those friend circles and still feel that you are going to be having different values altogether. So there has to be a sync. Now, if you are of a particular, you enjoy a certain standard of living. So everybody based on their own standard of living. I'm not saying push yourself beyond your standard of living.
Right.
But within your standard of living, there is enough that you can give to your child for him or her to understand. One is instant gratification. Yes, there has to be a portion of some money given to the kid for instant gratification.
To do whatever they want.
What do we do? I mean,
Right.
we are saying that kids should learn all this. Don't we also spoil ourselves by getting swayed into instant gratification? We do for ourselves as
If
well.
anything, the tendency is whatever I didn't get as a kid, I will do now.
Exactly. So now, if you're talking about teenagers now, okay, since you broached this topic, now teenagers, they've invariably been denied, many things that they ask for. Not everything is reasonable to ask for, anyways. But the moment you see the people who start earning first, when they get that liberty and the power of their own money, what do you think they do? It's revenge shopping.
Yeah.
Everything that they've not been allowed to do, when they were dependent on their parents, the first thing that they will do is go and shop for themselves.
Yeah.
Now, that psychology has to be understood very well. Are these are these kids those who were deprived of everything that they wanted to buy during their teenagers? So they go on to the revenge shopping. So why I'm insisting on the fact that while investing and saving is an important topic and sounds good to listen to, the fact of the matter remains that we've never taught our kids to be smart spenders.
Okay. So in your opinion, how do you do that?
So one is that, of course, you give them a limit and you allow them to understand how do you prioritize things. Like if they have an X amount of money given to them, guide them as to how they should spend that money. First, let them spend it.
Right.
Okay, even if you're giving them 500 rupees a week or 1,000 rupees a month, whatever you're giving them, at least just guide them and let them make mistakes.
Sure.
Okay, so your outer limit is fixed because the amount that you've given them, that's the only amount that they will go wrong with. So depending on your financial status, you give them monthly, whatever amount you want to give. And then allow them to make mistakes.
A lot of people are talking about online microtransactions and games and all of that. That becomes problematic. So are you saying that you should restrict access to those activities and say, okay, these are not allowed, or what? How
No,
do
so
you do
to
that?
begin with, one, why are you asking them to note down their expenses? So at least you'd have a sense of where the money is going.
Yeah.
Okay. Secondly, they're forming a habit of noting down their expenses.
Okay.
So at this stage, the stage one, you're not getting into judgmental, you're not getting into anything, just asking them to do what you feel like doing. Note down everything and then we'll discuss. Now, at the end of the month, you have the entire chart of where the money has gone.
Yeah.
That time you replenish that 1,000 rupees first. And the second thing, then you guide them. So look, would it be better if you had spent this not in this area, but somewhere else? Do you think that rewards that, I mean, the give and take, like as in you spend so much money, did you get what you wanted out of it? Let them learn this through a process. Okay, once they become smart spenders, okay, they've spent what they wanted to with their freedom. So they're not deprived. They're not feeling the sense of, revenge shopping later on, saying that I will do what I want when I get my money. You have to, as a parent, be hand-holding them into the process. Now, next month, you sit with them and you say, okay, look, could you have spent somewhere smartly? Maybe they think about it, right? Even if they don't, they'll make mistakes for 2-3 months. What is your downside in the whole exercise? The amount that you've given them.
Yeah.
Okay, so if you're given 1,000, that's the worst that can happen with 1,000 rupees. The only thing you have to be careful about, they're not spending in something which is bad in nature in terms
bad
of
for them.
bad for them.
Right.
So that's why you're asking them to monitor it. I mean, that's why I'm making a note of it.
Right.
Now, once they understand how to spend wisely, okay, then you introduce a concept of savings.
Sure.
You say, look, now you've managed your money well. Now you know where to spend, where not to spend. Would you like to introduce a concept of, say, 20% or 10% of what I'm giving you towards something that you may not want to spend in the month of April itself, but probably in the month of March.
Or that you might not be able to afford because you're only getting a finite amount of money.
So it has to be a gradual process wherein you introduce money to them and you let them enjoy the money management rather than become a responsibility of reporting to your parents. Then your parents being the policeman on that, or say that why did you spend here, why did you do that? Instead of that, let them enjoy the money management process, let them enjoy the conversation they have with you on this, rather than it becoming a policing activity for them.
One of the most talked about pieces of this show in the past has been how much do you save for your child and how much do you transfer to them? And this particular clip of a show went viral, Harsh, because my guest said, I don't think parents should be required to transfer assets to their child. Now, everybody had an opinion on this, and a lot of parents understandably felt very strongly about the fact that they're my children, they're my responsibility, and I will create assets for them. But ultimately, practically everybody I know, when their child is born, will want to make certain investments on their behalf. The question is, what is the best way to do this? Because I know the first few things that you look at are Public Provident Fund, Sukanya Samriddhi Scheme if it's a girl child, insurance policies as well, some of them look at, which is, I look at your face and I know what you're going to say. So I'm trying to get from you, what is a good idea, what is not?
So the first thing is whether you should save for your child and transfer some assets to your child or not. I mean, it's personal values, quite honestly. As a parent, I would want to secure my child. I mean, I would want to create assets which I can transfer to my child. But it all depends on each parent to themselves. But I think the majority of parents
would want to safeguard their children.
As a parental responsibility, the first thing is going to be to enable the child to be on their own feet. I mean, that's the primary, I think, objective or the goal of every parent, is to say that, okay, I want my child to be independent. Now, what it takes to be independent? What is your responsibility as a parent to ensure that they get good education?
Sure.
Now, how do you give a good education is when you make enough provisions for that good education. So your question, when the child is born, we are also guiding all our clients to say that why don't you start saving for their higher education when the child is born itself. So you will require this money possibly after 18 years of the age of the child. But you have to start preparing for it, right? The earlier you prepare, the better, right?
I'm sorry, I want to bring this up because your son is studying as well. Because so therefore you'd be best placed to talk about this. What is the kind of amount that you need to save, particularly if you want to send them abroad?
So a typical cost of undergrad studies overseas, especially in the US, Canada, UK, is what I'm talking about, would be approximately $100,000 a year.
Right.
And
right now.
Right now, yes. It includes the tuition fees, it includes your other, the food, travel, etc., everything put together. It would be approximately $100,000 a year, and the undergrad course is about 4 years. So it takes about $400,000 for an undergrad course.
Yeah.
If you go closer to India, which is Singapore, etc., it will be slightly lesser.
Yeah.
But the objective is like if you're aspiring to send your children overseas, you better start saving when they're just born, right? Because you'll have the compounding effect. You'll have the number of years to yourself to save for it. So if your child is just born and you're saving, you have 18 years at least to save for it, right?
Yeah.
Because that is your responsibility. You're not doing it because your child is going to ask for it or whatever. But as a parent, you want to fulfill your duties, which is to ensure that he's on his own. How does he become on his own? When he has good education to himself. To provide good education is your responsibility.
Right.
So you're saving for it.
Yep.
Right? Now, when the child has finished his graduation, his education, then technically your responsibility in that context is, look, I've done my bit.
Right.
Now you're well equipped enough, capable enough to get yourself some kind of a living, and then you please go out and explore yourself. There is where if you just sit on the fence and just see that, okay, fine, he or she is on their own or trying, at least struggling, because the early age struggle is important.
It is.
It is, because they learn how to then manage stress. You can't just be hand-holding them all throughout their life, right?
Yeah.
So at one point in time, you have to know what is your basic responsibility. If you've done that, and then they are on their own, simultaneously, if you've continued to add assets for your own self, you provided for your own retirement, and after everything being done, if there's some assets left, whom do you then give it to?
Of course.
It'll go back to your children, right? I mean, whom you'd want to save for at the end of it. If something is left, if nothing is left, of course, you don't need to compromise on your living and then leave it for them. I mean, that's not what we're talking about.
Sure.
I'm saying whatever is inheritance is always what is left after you've provided for your own self. So yeah, so that's how you will have to plan. There is no other choice. So talking about where should you invest when the child is born, I mean, now again, time horizon is something to be considered. Inflation is something to be considered.
So 15, 17 years is what you're talking about, right?
So over a longer period of time, we understand that assets such as equities through mutual funds or any other route would be a better way to create wealth over a longer period of time. However, if you are from that kind of a background who's not very comfortable with equities to begin with, you have other products. You can probably start with the PPF.
So, but PPF, the question that I have is that you have had circulars in the recent past that say that you can't have multiple accounts, or rather the amount of contribution to the PPF is a certain amount, right?
Correct.
So you want to make that point?
Yes. So basically, as a parent, so suppose you take a father and the minor's PPF account. So you can open a PPF account in the name of a minor.
Yeah.
You can have a PPF account in your name as well.
Yeah.
Now the combined limit of your PPF and that of the child is 1.5 lakhs per annum.
Okay.
It's not that 1.5 lakhs you can put in your PPF account and 1.5 lakh in the child's additionally. Both combined has to be 1.5.
And if you breach that, rather?
Yeah. So suppose hypothetically you've put 1.5 lakhs in your account and you put 1.5 in your child's account. Once the PPF authorities identify that two deposits have been made, they will not pay you interest on the deposit, on the duplicate deposit. Okay. So you stand to lose out on that. So you will be very mindful. Yeah, it could over a period of time become a large amount of money.
Yeah.
So on a deposit of say probably 2 lakhs, all you know that over 15 years the interest is 2 lakhs.
Sure.
Being compounded, so that you will not be entitled to that kind of an interest on a double deposit. So though you can open an account, you have to be mindful of what the limits are, and that's a combined limit of 1.5 lakhs on parent and the child.
Okay.
So the wife can invest independently.
Separately.
Yeah.
So, and then there's also Sukanya Samriddhi, which is available. You have, but a lot of these are not as lucrative as they were perhaps a few years back when they were available for deductions under the ATC. So would you say that more and more now, and also there's the NPS Vatsalya, which was launched not too long back. I must confess that I don't know whether it's a great product to consider.
Quite honestly, I mean, to say that NPS Vatsalya you plan for the retirement of your child, I think it's a bit of a stretch in my personal opinion as
Because
well.
you're talking about 60 years.
No, I'm more
ultimately.
concerned about logically saying that I provide for my child's education, I provide for his retirement also. I mean,
That is a point that I was also making, Harsh.
So as a parent, am I supposed to be planning for my child's retirement?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think that. I mean, then I'm taking care of the child for his entire life as well. Okay, the logic saying that you invest until the child is 18, post that he gets into that, you've started something and they continue with it.
Yeah.
I think it's too stretched with a lock-in up to age 60.
Okay, so if it's not these, and you said PPF is an option, but in mutual funds, the tendency is to go for certain types of products. There are solution-oriented products because the name is a children's education fund.
Correct.
Right, so because it's been tagged as such, people tend to go into these. But do you need to really do that? And also when you're choosing, the availability of that kind of time frame is a perfect opportunity for you to consider a better risk-reward situation. So how do you invest?
So I'll tell you, see, the solution-oriented funds, what are these essentially? So there would be a children's gift fund kind of a name. The nomenclature will be a children's gift fund or a children's education fund, career fund or something like that. So there is an emotional connect to that.
Right.
So as a parent, imagine a situation that you're aiming to save for the child's higher education. Now, if you have a fund which has a name also, matching to that, saying that children's career fund, okay, and that investment is done in the name of the child. So in the journey of the next 18 years, if there is a requirement for money, you will not dip into that because, psychologically as a parent, you say it's a kid's money. I don't want to, I don't want to touch it. Now the same thing, there is a choice. A parent can invest in their own name as well.
Sure.
Okay, now they've invested in their own name and they've marked it. They've tagged it saying that this is for my child's higher education. Now, 5 years down the line, 10 years down the line, there could come a situation where you're buying a house or you need money for down payment, you need to do something. And where are you going to look back to whatever you have, right? Now, when you look back to whatever you have and then there is some money lying in your own name, but in your mind tagged for your child, I mean, the chances of you removing out of that are higher.
The temptation to go. But what if it is, it's in your child's name and it's a mutual fund scheme? You are allowed to do that, right?
Yes. So if you're looking at a solution-oriented fund, then 5 years lock-in.
No, I'm not saying solution. I'm saying any mutual fund scheme. If it's in your child's name.
Yeah, you can invest in child's name as well, but there will be one kind of a hurdle in your own mind saying that should I remove money which is for which is in the child's name. For his or her higher education. So I think there's only an emotional connect that differentiates investing in your child's name or investing in your name for the child.
And what about the risk reward situation?
So risk reward, I think if you're investing in a equity mutual fund, whether you do it in your name or your child's name, the performance is going to be the same. The only difference is going to be how tempted are you going to dip into it whenever you need money. So invariably, we've seen parents who invested in their child's name don't tend to remove money even if they need it. And if the money is in their own name, I mean, they tend to dip into it.
Okay. The last, and we don't have too much time to talk about it because it's a topic for a completely different show, but I want you to broach it as well. When it comes to transference of assets to your child, what is the best way to do it? Because I think a lot of people contemplate this. If their child has gone abroad, if they have a lot of physical assets, do they liquidate them over a period of time because it becomes transference easy? It makes transference easy?
So see, I'll tell you, Alex, real estate is a very sensitive topic.
Yes,
so as parents, I mean, particularly if your kids are overseas, I mean, you do not sell it while you're alive.
Okay.
Why? Because unless you're planning to move over there with them, because you need shelter for yourself. And if your kids are NRIs, we have n number of cases that we read about saying that kids don't take care of their parents. And once they're out, they're emotionally, not as close as they would be when they're living probably together. So you need to secure yourself to that extent, saying that while I'm alive as a parent, I need shelter on myself, right? I'm not letting that go at all. Now, post the demise of the parents, when nobody's going to occupy that property, then the child takes a decision, being a legal heir, takes a decision whether he or she wants to retain a property back in their home country or they don't want to. What is more important to understand is that how do you make sure that you have documentation in place so that in case something happens to you, the child gets that property smoothly transferred to them.
The will becomes important.
So the will, nominations, wills become a very important document. And every parent, I would say, or every person for that matter, even if you don't have children right now, but if you've accumulated assets for yourself, there has to be a mechanism in which you pass on that to somebody else. And a will is that document that establishes the person who will be entitled to that property after you're not there. Because you don't want to have created something all your life and then later on the next generation is only fighting for it.
Yeah.
And then it goes into dispute, which goes in for like decades altogether in courts. You don't want that kind of a situation.
Yeah.
So how do you address that? You effectively plan your succession. How do you plan your succession? There are multiple ways. One is, of course, will. You need to have a will in place. Many people have this misconception saying that I don't foresee any dispute in my family. That is why I don't need a will. The will is not prepared to address disputes. It is prepared to ensure that there is smooth transition to the next generation.
Yeah.
Even if you have one child, you don't have siblings. Your child does not have any siblings. So it's not that because he or she doesn't have any siblings, there is not going to be any disputes. Everything naturally goes to my child.
Yeah.
That is what you believe. The law does not know that your child is the only legal successor, right? So you need to create a will just to ensure that the assets, all that you worked for all throughout your life, go smoothly to the next generation without any trouble. So will is one. You can make a family trust if you wish to, if the assets justify that much. So you create a trust wherein the assets go into the trust, and then there is how the trust functions. You make a trust deed for that. So there are multiple ways to plan inheritance depending on what your assets are, whether the kids are in India or outside, what you want to do. There are a whole lot of, it's another subject altogether.
It is indeed another subject altogether, inheritance. But I think we've covered quite a bit on this program. Thanks so much, Harsh, for joining me today.
My pleasure always, Alex.
All right, that brings us to the end of this edition of Moneywise. Thanks so much for joining in. Let us know what you'd like to hear on this program. In the meanwhile, stay tuned. This is NDTV Profit.